Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And Affliction Warlock is one of the absolute best specializations. It is a blast, and it is a ton of fun in patch 11.1. And I know it can be super difficult, super frustrating, trying to find a specialization that's the right fit for you, and also the most viable option so that you're having the best experience and able to find groups for your content more easily. And I can almost guarantee you that Affliction Warlock is going to be able to deliver you that. It was my number one specialization for most fun of the whole expansion, and honestly it just got even better with patch 11.1. So in today's video we're going to be breaking down a gearing guide. What stats do you need to be going after? What embellishments am I using? What talent build am I using? And how to execute your rotation in order to have the most amount of success. And we're going to be covering some gameplay VOD footage as well, so you know exactly what to do in the midst of the action. So when we look at gear for Affliction Warlock, you are most certainly going to want to be getting your set bonuses. Your set bonuses this series, oh boy, they are juicy, man. You're going to be getting Jackpot, which just has a chance to give you 12% haste, and you get this guaranteed when you press Dark Glare. So when you've extended all of your most powerful dots, you're basically getting old school Dark Soul right off the rip of that. And then not to mention on your 4-set bonus, it's just going to buff the damage of your Unstable Affliction by a significant amount, and it's going to cause it to spread to 3 nearby targets within 40 yards. So spread Unstable Affliction, big haste boost. This is one of the best set bonuses in the whole patch, which is a huge reason why this specialization is leveling up. And the pieces that you're going to want to craft this gear on, initially in the season, I've crafted it on helmet and shoulders, and this is because they give you high priority stats like haste and mastery. After that, you're going to want to get it on chest piece, you're going to want to get it on gloves, and you will want to avoid legs, which you can see is my first crafted piece. And the main reason I'm crafting a main set piece is this is going to save me a lot of conquests. It's going to allow me to acquire a lot of gear in later weeks. So I've opted to craft it onto the legs because I'm not going to get that tier set bonus. I have then crafted a ring as well, and I'm crafting the Algari gem increase. I think it's called the focusing lens. So when you have sockets, you'll just have a chance to do a little bit of extra damage. And this does come out to around 4 to 5% damage on average. And I found this embellishment to be very good. Outside of this, the Ascendance embellishment can be good, but in the early season, I'm going to prefer to go after the sockets damage, and then perhaps later on, I will shift it away once Conquest is uncapped into the Ascendance, and I'll keep you guys updated with that. Or if you want to check in with me as far as that gearing, make sure you check out my stream. It's linked in the description down below. I'm doing 2,400 challenges on almost all of the specializations again this season. I've completed them multiple times throughout the season, so I'm making sure that you're getting some high quality information and experience. So those are going to be your 4-set bonuses. Those are going to be your crafted pieces. We are still focusing on haste and versatility. This will allow us to fake cast more easily, and this will make us more durable because we are frequently a target for enemies. And aside from that, mastery is not a terrible stat to pick up in between, but with my build, I generally avoid crit. There are some warlocks who like playing a different build, which I think does focus around crit, but I am still focusing around the Soul Harvester, and my talent build is really nice as well for warlocks that are a beginner, in my opinion. I like running the Sack Pet, so this way you don't need to worry so much about pet management. Where's my pet? Is it out of range? Is it CC'd? Is it dying? Do I need to maintain its health? That level of complexity is like an additional layer that I prefer to just not play with. I like using the sacrifice and just getting extra damage on everything that I'm doing basically. And this build still focuses around the Haunt instant Shadow Bolt combo, so you get like this really big burst moment, and I like it because Haunt is really fast, and you want spells that are really fast in order to fake interrupts, and we're getting more haste this patch, so you can proc your precognition gem, so you'll be able to be immune to interrupts and have a much easier time in PvP, which you'll see once we get to the gameplay portion of this. But that is my main goal, is to kind of reduce keybinds with this build, keep things nice and simple, and have just a very straightforward strategy of trying to burst combo with my Haunt and Shadow Bolt while maintaining dots on the target, which we'll cover in the rotation part of the guide in just a moment. As far as PvP talents, I like running Jinx. This is a really good way to reduce the number of global cooldowns that Affliction Warlock needs to normally output in order to do damage. So you can use Curse of Weakness basically, or Exhaustion, or the crit, tongues. I'm forgetting the names of the curses. You can use these to apply multiple dots. So it's basically 3 globals for 1. 3 for 1 deal. That's pretty good. The next one is Nether Ward. Now, I run this when enemies are either spellcasters, so I want to spell reflect important spells like Chaos Bolts, or I want to avoid magical interrupts, which is the second layer of complexity to using the Nether Ward. You can actually use it to immune Mind Freeze or Counterspell and get your most vulnerable spells out without having to worry about being interrupted. Those are the situations you want to use Nether Ward. Now, if you're running against multiple melee DPS, you can swap this out. Depending on the map, I will go Impish Instincts. If it's a map where I can't get a long gateway, this enables me to be able to port more frequently. But if it's a large map where I'm able to escape a large distance, I may run Gateway Mastery instead in order to get away from melee attackers on a large map. And those are kind of the two differences between these that I would generally shift between. The next one is Rotten Decay. I really like this one with this build because you get a lot of instant Shadow Bolt procs. And again, it's going to reduce the number of global cooldowns that you need, so you can do more effective burst damage. You can spend more time casting Malefic Rapture and Fear, which are more effective spells to end the game. And that's my main goal with this build, is reducing complexity, keeping it simple but strong and effective while reducing global cooldown intensity. So when we get to the start of a PvP match, likely you're going to be getting attacked. First, you're going to need to get a pet out, obviously. So we'll get the pet out and we will sack the pet. If you're getting attacked and you're not able to cast, your main goal is to get the instant dots on the target. We're going to use Curse of Tongues, Curse of Weakness, or Exhaustion. So if it's caster, we'll use Curse of Tongues to reduce their cast speeds. If it is a melee DPS that is guaranteed to get really good uptime, we will use Weakness to reduce their damage. And if it's a melee DPS that I think I will be able to kite and I don't have a DPS that has a snare, I will use Curse of Exhaustion in order to apply dots. And you can see there's a little bit of a trickiness to that. But you'll see that the dots don't run out equally. So you want to make sure that you are refreshing this agony before it runs out. So it's got its little timer on it that counts up, and it's got this little sliding bar. You just want to make sure that this agony is getting refreshed at likely the last possible second that you can. And this way you are maintaining maximum damage without really even having to cast. Like I'm doing 300k DPS, just maintaining this instant dot rotation, which is very simple, not challenging. And I'm not even shooting Shadow Bolt procs right in between, which would be extending those dots. And that is the main goal if you're getting attacked. This is the main focus. Make sure you're shooting the instant Shadow Bolts like this. Don't focus too much on Unstable Affliction if you are being attacked. Instead, what you want to do is focus on Haunt. So Haunt is really fast. So you can use Haunt to fake, and then you can shoot your instant Shadow Bolts while you're faking Haunt over and over until you can get Precognition. Once you have Precognition, that's when you can go for the Unstable Affliction. That's when you can go for the Soul Rot. That's when you can go for the Haunt, the Singularity, Dark Glare, and this is where we're just absolutely going to be farming with instant Shadow Bolts and casting Raptures, extending our dots with Shadow Bolts, and totally shredding people. So our burst rotation is generally spamming Malefic Rapture once we're able to get Precognition, or we can just avoid interrupts entirely while maintaining Haunt and shooting as many Shadow Bolts as we physically can. This is our main goal. Remember, in PvP, rotation is never going to be perfectly optimal. You want to make it the most effective that it can be. So if you're in a situation where you can cast, you need to cast. Don't worry about your instant dots in those positions. But if you're in a position where you can't really cast, they're on your butt the whole time, you can't cast, you're getting stunned multiple times, focus on maintaining instant dots and trying to get through interrupts with Haunt. Obviously, you have defensive cooldowns, which we'll look at here for the gameplay portion of it, but we've covered the talents. I'll have the talent code linked in the description. We know what stats we want, which pieces of tier that we want to get. We understand the basics of our rotation. Now let's put it into action, put it into gear here with some VOD footage as to what it is exactly that you want to be doing in any given game so that you can be the most effective that you can be. Now, you can use Phantom Singularity before the big combo. I generally think extending with Dark Glare is good, but if you're taking a lot of damage and you can't really cast, throwing Phantom Singularity out is totally fine, and that's this little purple button here. But start of the game, you want to get a gateway with Soul Burn, so it's instant, and get a portal down out of line of sight, and then reposition to a good spot. So I'm standing up here on the ledge because I'm going to Kultiran knock the rogue, but see, I can cast here, so I go for Haunt. As soon as I know that I can cast, I cast. I have instant dots maintained on the priest and the rogue, and I'm trying to kill this Siphon with a Shadow Bolt, and I'm standing on the high ground out of line of the enemy healer, so the enemy healer has to run in towards me, and I'm using defensive cooldowns like Dark Pact during this entire time and sitting inside of my priest barrier. So now the enemy healer has come closer to us, so we can start getting crowd control. So we're going to start spamming Fear on Rogue, try and slow down some of the damage because we took a lot of damage in the initial stages of this game. Here the Rogue's not in range to kick us, so we're going to cast. We get Soul Rot, Unstable Affliction, Haunt, big Shadow Bolt combo. We're just watching the Rogue. He's the only interrupt on the opposing team. So anytime he's not in melee range of us, this means we can cast. Like right here, the Rogue's not in melee range. I can spam cast. I can Fear. I can use Rapture. We'll gate during Garrote. I think when you're silenced, using Gateway is a good time. And then we get Life Crypt away. Our Hunter's getting crowd control while we're focusing on positioning and surviving and doing the most amount of damage that we can while getting trained by a Rogue. Reposition to the high ground. jump downstairs for a moment. Use Coil here to bait Dispel. I think using like Coil and Fear to bait Dispel so you can get Soul Rot off on a target later on is generally a good idea. I go for a Fear. It gets faded. Not the end of the world. They have no interrupt. I'm tracking that on my Omnibar right here, so there's no kick. So I don't need to really be worried about faking interrupts right now. I'm going to use my Soulburn Hellstone. Make sure when you're using your Hellstone that you're using Soulburn before it. We fake the kick, so we got precognition, so we can keep maintaining full dots here onto the Shadow Priest, get a Fear onto the Disc Priest, pour it away from the Disc Priest, and pull the enemy attacker away from the enemy healer while trying to do as much damage as possible. We'll spam some Fears in the Rogue, try and get some control. And the main reason I'm spamming Fears is because if you get kicked on it, you can Malefic Rapture. So you got to also understand that if you want to burst, you bait the enemy to trick the enemy into thinking you want to CC by casting Fear, which they'll panic and interrupt, because if the Fear lands, oh no, my team might lose. So you use Fear to bait interrupts when you have a lot of soul shards, and then you spam Malefic Rapture, and it lets you do a ton of damage for free, basically. So I'm using Fear again. The Rogue misses his kick. Now I can haunt. And you can see I'm not too focused on maintaining UA when I'm getting trained like this and getting pressured so heavily like this. I'm just trying to maintain the most effective amount of damage while avoiding the most amount of disruption and just shooting instant Shadow Bolts. And it's enough to be able to overcome them, enough to be able to take round number 1 victory. So don't like stress yourself out that you don't have an unstable affliction on a target where you just kind of stand there and you're casting it over and over and over and over and over, and you're just getting stunned and kicked and interrupt, and you have no dots out. You're not getting ahead at all for the game or adding any pressure for your team. That's where you're going to start falling behind. And that's where the game is different from PvE, where you would maybe optimally want to have unstable affliction as the first thing that you press when you can actually do it. But in PvP, it's a situational thing. Is there an interrupt nearby me? Can I free cast right now? Did I fake the interrupt? You need to be assessing that. Whenever you can free cast, you absolutely should. That should be your first priority. But if you can't, don't force yourself to do it too much and waste time not applying instant dots and getting ahead. So right here I can cast. So I'm going to go for Unstable Affliction. Hunter's not in range of me. I can get casts off. So cast. Anything I can cast on. I got UA on the Priest, but I'm going to haunt the Hunter. I don't care. I can cast right now and avoid interrupts. So I'm going to cast on whatever is in my line of sight, get those globals out, and try and maximize my damage onto any target that I can. There's still no interrupt next to me. I'm still spam casting. We got to kill off this Siphene, so we're going to toss out a couple dots. Siphene can generally be pretty tough to kill. We'll go for a Coil here onto the Priest, pull him away, and I am just casting this entire time because there are no interrupts near me. Soul Rot out, Dark Glare the Soul Rot, and this is going to be a lot of damage that likely the Priest needs to think about dispelling. We spell lock his Penance, we force Disperse. We're able to just kind of lay siege on this opposing team, get Fears on the Disc Priest, and when you're able to free cast, you can absolutely take control of the game, which is something that I like about Warlock, is that once you're able to actually get in position to start carrying, you can really feel like you can carry. But now they're turning around with the Fear, so we use that ending resolve. We use our Soulburn Hellstone. Really important to combo this together. Soulburn Port's not as important here because they don't really get a lot of uptime as a Shadow Priest comp. So my Soulburn should be going into my Hellstone when I need to. We're in another word here just to reflect. Again, another word debatable if I even need it here. I'm trying to reflect damage from the Shadow Priest mostly, or maybe avoid a stun or a silence when it's available from the Priest in those types of situations so I can cast. But it's likely not 100% necessary. Void Torrent, we're going to lock. Void Torrent does a lot of damage now. It is very important that you disrupt Void Torrent from Shadow Priest as much as you can. Shadow Priest is likely going to pick up in popularity as well moving forward, so it's important to know how to play against them. So their Void Torrent window is a very big deal. Bestial Wrath is up for the Hunter here. I could play Howl of Terror in this matchup. If the Hunter plays Fear Immunity on his pets, I'll be sad, but if he forgets to, Howl of Terror on the pets on the Bestial Wrath can be really effective. But we're just maintaining weakness on the Hunter because we don't need exhaustion. We have a Rogue that has a Snare, and we're maintaining Tongues on the Priest to reduce their cast speeds, and we're trying to disrupt Void Torrents. Here he faked it. A lot of Priests, once you've spell locked their Void Torrent once, it's like a fool me once thing. They'll just stop their cast instantly the next time that they cast it. So you got to play that mind game. We sneak in a Fear while we're able to free cast, swap the Fear over to the Priest for a moment, just trying to slow damage here because our Rogue is getting low HP. So anytime I see like, hey, teammates are low HP, now it's the time to use CC. I'm using Mortal Coil, I'm spamming Fear. I'm trying to slow down the game so that my allies can recover. And once they've recovered, then we turn it around. We get Haunt, we get the Shadow Bolt procs out, we're spamming Malefic Raptures, and this is where Affliction Warlock starts feeling really fun when you start pressuring all three enemies on the opposing team, and they're just ticking time bombs until inevitable demise and doom, and you just feel like you have complete domination of your opponents. That's the satisfying moment in the game. Once you get to that moment, you're able to just feel so awesome, and I think that's the main reason that I like Affliction Warlock so much, is just that raw pressure that you're able to build with the specialization and the tactics and strategies that go into it. So I enjoy this build. I think it's a lot nicer as a beginner or as maybe a done dad. Obviously, I think playing with a pet in certain situations, maybe not this lobby so much, but against paladins to purge their busting and protections if your team doesn't have a purge, can be really important, can be really effective. And that's the other awesome part about Affliction Warlock, is that I do think it has multiple builds. It's not just strictly one set of talents fits all. So if you want something that can expand and explore into the future, you're going to have that option. But I think that this build that I run is a great primer, just a great basic standard start that's going to get you a lot of effective value for not a huge amount of effort, and it's going to allow you to really scale. So here we've got big combo on the priest because I can cast. I got all my effective spells out on him, and I'm just spamming Malefic Raptures. I've locked him on cast. I should honestly Dark Glare here. I'm surprised I haven't. Dark Glare, huge damage, instant one shot. So when you could just carry so hard on the spec. You could just carry so hard on the spec. It's so much fun. I really enjoy playing it. It's one of my favorite specializations to play, and I definitely think it's a top performer at the moment that can get you results. So I hope you guys enjoyed this guide and this breakdown. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoy this type of content, you want to make sure you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated.